Hi, everyone. It's November 30th, 2023, and this is the weekly Backdrop Developer Meeting. We get together almost every week to talk about technical issues and problems that the Backdrop CMS project is facing. My name is Nate Lampton. I'm Quick Sketch on the Internet Core Committer and technical lead for the Backdrop project. We're joined here by now three others. Justin just dropping in, and we'll do some introductions. Tim, why don't you kick us off, and then we'll go to Greg.
Sure. I'm Tim Erickson, St. Paul Tim. I'm in Deerwood, Minnesota today. Go ahead.
Thanks, Tim. Greg, and then Justin, if you're around.
Yeah, my name is Greg. I'm mostly in Australia, in Melbourne, but now joining a few past months from Greece. Interested in anything related to Backdrop in any way that I can help. And yep, that's it for me.
Thanks, Greg. Justin?
Yeah, Justin Christopherson in Denver, Colorado. I help out with infrastructure and things when I can.
Awesome. Thanks. And welcome, Justin. Glad you could make it. All right. It's been a couple of weeks since we got together. Last week was Thanksgiving here in the United States. So we've got a couple of weeks of things to catch up on. Before we do that, there's some contrib updates that we always go over. So there's been 3 new contrib projects released in the last 2 weeks. There is the Drupal to Backdrop Migrate module, D2B module. We'll talk about that a little bit more. File menu items module and web form toggle status. So always great to see the continuing parade of new contrib modules be released. So the first module, the D2B module, is actually the first topic item for today because we had a sprint right after the first meeting that in the day after our last meeting, we had the D2B spread. That's what I'm trying to say. And so that was a great little collection of people that got together. We worked out several of the issues in the D2B module. We streamlined the overall approach. I know that Irina has been anxiously testing and trying things out and making lots of progress on the feedback there. Ryan Price has jumped in as a co-maintainer of the module. Doc Wilmot has made several changes. He's the original author of the module. I got in some changes there. And overall, D2B is looking really great. For those of you that are not aware of D2B module, it's a little bit of an experimental, well, very much an experimental module, but the concept of it is that it is an assistance module to help you upgrade from Drupal 7 to Backdrop. And instead of just telling people to follow a set of README instructions as to like how to get your site into a state where you can run update.php, you start with a running Backdrop install D2B, and then it assists you getting your Backdrop site ready, such as downloading all the contrib modules, connecting to the old database, gets you ready, and then when your site is ready, then it plops you over to update.php and then runs the update on your Backdrop website. So it's a neat thing. It definitely makes the process feel a lot more streamlined and smooth, a lot less fiddling around in any kind of command line or moving files around, because it does most of those things for you. So neat project for sure. It feels like Drupal style migrates, where you start with a Drupal site and then you migrate the content into it, but it is not at all the same thing. Because it's basically it's the upgrade process is still done by update.php. It just helps you get ready. If you start with a Backdrop website, helps you get ready to run that update.php process.
Nate, can I ask, because I've been really wanting to try this out, like what do I need to do a test of it? And by what do I mean? Do I need a live site on the same server? could I set up a local new backdrop server and connect to a Drupal site on a remote server
Yes.
and run it? I could.
Yep, and all the testing we've been doing actually has been mostly to a remote server. What we've been doing is start with a Pantheon site on Drupal 7 and then use its database credentials to enter that information into the Backdrop website, and then it pulls down the database and does the migration from a remote site onto a local Backdrop site. The requirement basically is that you have the ability to connect remotely to a MySQL server.
Right.
Or locally, it doesn't matter. You just need to have the database credentials to a MySQL server that you can connect to. That's the requirement. We're working on making it so that you could upload a file instead of connecting directly to the database, but that's not an option yet.
Yeah, I was about to say that most websites, actual live sites, do not allow you, unless you open the ports to connect directly to the MySQL server. The connection is allowed only from localhost. But yeah, you can, if you have a dev site where you pull up the database and there's no security concerns, the database is sanitized and all, then you can test it. But yeah, we should allow as an option for people to just grab a DB dump from the actual site and instead of trying to connect, upload that into the Backdrop site. Should work the same. It's a different method of pulling the database, but other than that, it works the same.
Yep. Yeah, one of the things that I like that this module does is it reads the existing database and finds out all the modules that you had installed, and then it provides you a list of all of the modules, and you just click download, and then it downloads them all into your Backdrop site, and it notifies you of ones that are missing. A new feature that it had just this week is that now you can optionally choose not to download certain modules if you decide that you only want certain ones, which is kind of interesting. I'd probably recommend that you do that cleanup before you run the migration, but whatever. But yeah, it's still neat.
Yeah, we should clarify that it does an audit of the D7 modules and it downloads the respective Backdrop modules.
Backdrop modules.
Yeah.
Yep. So anyway, that was a successful sprint. We got a lot done, and probably just most exciting, there's now actually a contrib release of that project. So if you want to try it out, you can now do that. You can use Project Installer to go and grab it now because it has an actual official release. Still, I mean, it's a very dangerous module because it's like it blows away your entire database. So, but since you should be running it on a blank Backdrop website in the first place, I feel like the level of caution needed hopefully is fairly minimal, because you should really only be running it if you're doing it on a blank site, if you're starting from scratch. So, okay, let's see. So that was November 18th. But then also last week, we didn't have our weekly meeting, but we did have a code sprint the following weekend. And so actually, Greg, you started on the 23rd, I think. The 24th was the big day, and then 25th and 26th kind of had a little long tail of small things afterwards, I think.
Yeah.
Kind of summarize kind of what we were looking at and what we got accomplished.
Yeah, sure. I don't have the numbers of the exact things that we got merged, but we got plenty of things done. And if not merged, we progressed a lot of them. So I tried, because I'm in a different part of the world, the day comes sooner for me, I should say. So I started as early as possible as I could. And we've talked about that sprint in the previous meeting as well. The idea or the main concept behind it is just to move along features that are for the next minor release 1.27.0, which is slated for the 15th of January next year, which is coming up. However, we didn't want to limit people if they wanted to sprint with us and they wanted to move things along. We didn't necessarily forbid anyone from working on issues that are bug fixes or things that can get in the next bug fix release. And we did get a lot of such issues merged and moved along. Yeah, I was pretty happy with the progress that we made. But as I said, I underestimated the importance of the Thanksgiving to mainly the US audience and how many people participated. But although we did have quite a few people show up during different times, I need to say, because I'm not sure, and apologize for those people that tried to join the Zoom room and they didn't find me or anyone else there. What we try to do is sort of 24/7, not 24/7, 24 hours a day for those 4 days. I was trying to be online for like 4 or 5 hours and then off for a couple of hours to rest or maybe slightly longer. But the side effect, not the side effect, one problem that we had was that Zitzi, which is the software that we're using for the meetings, was actually kicking everyone out if there was no activity, no audio or video activity. We have found some possible workarounds to try for the next sprint that we have, which is one person needs to have a background that is animated, and then GT gets fooled and thinks that there is a video activity and doesn't shut down. So yeah. Now, with regards to issues, I don't have a summary of how many, but I think you mentioned something like 19 issues got merged, bug fixes, I think, Nate, or maybe more. Can't remember.
Yeah, I think we got in. I can't remember. It was like 6 issues that were committed, and yeah, we emptied out the RTBC queue. We merged several rounds of C-spell changes.
That was a big one, actually. We should mention that. I believe that now people should be happier with their pull requests. I very rarely see C-spell complaining about old, previously existing things, and I do have a pull request for those couple of things, which is very small, like my 5 lines change or something. But yeah, we're in a good spot now. It's less annoying. The only annoying bug now is the one with the layout tests that keeps failing consistently. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll make a note of that just for anybody that's watching. We're facing a ongoing problem with one of our tests failing really pretty consistently. Layout upgrade path test.
Having said that,
we execute the tests on PHP 5.6, 7.4, and 8.2. And it usually passes on one of the 3, but it fails like almost all the time now. And we didn't change anything with it. It's a matter of like the update hooks are now executing in a different order than they used to, and something is happening there that makes this test that hadn't been failing hardly ever is now failing almost all the time. And so if that happens, like I've seen people like closing and reopening their pull requests repeatedly. Just don't worry about it.
that used to help in the past. It doesn't help anymore. And a good indication that is the problem and not an actual bug is that if you have something wrong in your code, then it should consistently fail on the same batch for every PHP version. So every PHP version, we have a parallel concurrency. So we have 3 batches for the PHP 5, another 3 for PHP 7, and another 3 for PHP 8. If you see a test failing on the same batch for all 3 versions, then go and check the failure, because it most likely is a valid failure, something that you have wrong in your code. But if you see it failing on 1 or 2 of them, but not on the 3rd, then yeah, it's most likely the test failure, that random silly failure, which we haven't figured out why.
Yeah, let me see. We have an issue for this one.
We have
6293 is the issue. We're trying to work it out, but we still don't have a great idea of what the problem is happening, why it's happening. Anyway, so Thanksgiving sprint also very successful. Lots of issues fixed and solved there. We now have almost 40 closed issues in the 126.2 milestone, which really indicates that we need to make a new bug fix release. I think that we were going to shoot for this week, but here we are on Thursday. I don't think that there's any problem though for us preventing us from doing a release tomorrow. If people if
Yeah,
that sounds okay, sounds okay with people. Jen is out of town, so I'll be orchestrating the largest portion of the release. But now that we have like the release notes generator, it makes things relatively easy. This isn't a security release, nor is it a minor release, and so there's no blog post that needs to be written. So it's these kinds of releases are much easier than a normal one. So I think we'll be able to manage it just fine.
Nate, as a segue, do you think after we cut the 26 release, do you think that right after that we're in a good spot with CK Editor to merge it into 1.x and start including it in our tests, or not yet?
Well, there's a couple of things there. The test coverage it includes is really minimal at this point. Honestly, the amount of test coverage we can include is not great because it's largely JavaScript that functionality that we're testing, and our test coverage doesn't execute JavaScript. So even CK Editor 4 never really had that great of test coverage, and neither does 5. Yeah, tests aren't really something we're going to benefit a lot from.
No, I meant included in the pull request sandboxes so people can start testing any content editing related issues with the new editor. That's what I meant. More exposure for people to kick the tires and bring any possible bugs into light.
Yep. I'm not quite sure where I feel like we are with CK Editor. It's in a really good place, but I'm not really sure that it's like, let's put it into core level place. But maybe I should just let that rest and put it in anyway, because there's the benefits to it being in core. For one, it would completely solidify the question of what happens next, right? With CK Editor. CK Editor also, just in that news, bypassed its end of life date this past week on November 22nd. That was the end of life for CK Editor 4, which is a fuzzy end of life because they have an LTS program. So it's possible they'll still have security releases for it, but it's a little thorny. So the State of CK Editor module, we had a new release this past week. It's looking really good. Like functionality wise, like we don't have any like major issues open in the issue queue right now. I think the area that I've been focusing on is an upgrade path from CK Editor 4 to 5. Upgrading really isn't that difficult at this point, where you edit your text format, you change it from 4 to 5, and then you reconfigure your toolbar. And the upgrade path that we have built out streamlines that process where it migrates your toolbar and settings for you. But it's a one-way upgrade. But I think that helps a little bit with people moving from 4 to 5 as well. I don't know, Greg. I'm really waffling about this. But like we only have next month is the thing, and so delaying it further. If we delay it further, then it's not going to happen.
Yes,
so I think that you've got a pretty strong point there that we should just bite down and put it in.
Yeah, and also there's other small things that logistics, like any new issues ideally should go into core CK Editor 5 release. And how we have been working now is we are raising issues in the contrib repo, and you're not, because it's in a different GitHub organization, you won't be able to transfer the settings, and the issues we would need to copy and paste, and it's tedious. And the other thing is that there might be small UX issues like cleaning up the user interface that we can start working in core. And there's we'll have both the small issues, like for example, we have both CK Editor 4 and CK Editor 5 entries in the status report page, and there's an issue that we have in core about hook requirements outer that will allow us to have a single entry for that. So it will provide use cases for other issues to actually, work on.
Can I ask a process question, which may have been dealt with many times before? Will it be turned on by default or off? And does it help? Like, should we start with one release where it's just there, but it's off by default, kind of like an experimental module, and then turn it on by default the next release? Or have we talked about that yet?
We sort of like talked. I'm not sure if we've done it in a recorded meeting, but we have talked in sprints or in the
Yes,
queue.
sir.
And I think that the prevalent position now is that for new sites, CK Editor 5 will be on by default, and CK Editor
Okay.
4 will be hidden because we are in a really good spot. Like, it works. There's very few bugs that have surfaced. Right, we are very confident. For existing sites, I think that the general idea is that we can allow people to have both editors and testings in parallel, and then once they remove CK Editor 4 from being used in any text format, then we'll hide it. So once it's not being used anywhere anymore.
Yeah, once they have to turn off the module, and then the module it's a hidden module, and so if it's been turned off, then it can't be turned back on. Which is kind of an interesting place for new sites. They'll start out with CK Editor 5, and it won't be easy for them to use CK Editor 4 if they wanted to. They'll need to enable it with Drush or B, or go into the module and uncomment the hidden line from the info file so that they can turn it on the UI if they want to do that. But yeah, I think, adding to what Greg said, it would really be much, much better for us if the editor that came out of the box was a new one that was supported. And so I think that even though we don't really have the time to have this, like, have it be there, but off, that we should go right into let's turn it on for new sites. Plus, the risk is really low for new sites still, because there's no existing content. The only problems that you're going to run into are things like CK Editor not formatting or working the way you want it to on new content, but it's not going to damage anything that's pre-existing.
Well, I was just thinking if that would affect your confidence in putting it into core, that we could adjust that policy. But it sounds like it really wouldn't, because the only thing we would disable it for would be new sites, and that's really not where we have concerns anyway. So
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, so it'll probably be on for new sites. It will be on for new sites if we enable it.
Yeah, I think that the long-term plan is to keep CK Editor 4 for the entire course of 1.x and remove it from core and move it to contrib in Backdrop when we release Backdrop 2.0 or something like that.
Yeah.
It will still be in contrib for people that need it.
Yeah. Speaking of contrib, we'll probably also, if we put CK Editor 5 into core, we'll probably still want to maintain the contrib module for the next little while, to make it so that users can continue to use the existing contrib module, because they're not going to download core and pull out CK Editor module out of core to put it into their current sites. And we want people using the current CK Editor contrib module on their current sites to also test with existing content and existing sites. So it'll add a little bit of burden that we'll need to start maintaining the module in two places. But that'll only last for a couple of months.
Is the namespace the same? Because then we have a change that was fairly recent, which presents a warning in the status page. This is another thing that we need to test once we have CK Editor 5 in core, right? If you have the same name of the module being core and contrib or multiple places, there's a warning that says duplicate module found or project found in your status page. And how things work, not only in Backdrop but at Drupal, is that the contrib and custom ones take precedence over the core ones. So yeah.
Yep.
So there's more things that we need to test and take into account.
Yep. All right. Well, that's kind of the state of things with CK Editor 5. Yeah, Greg, I think you've convinced me that yes, we don't even need to really wait for the bug fix release because it's on a different branch. But Yeah, I think that the order of operations, let's have our bug fix released tomorrow, and then, yeah, let's kind of pivot our attention to moving CKEditor 5 into core. It probably won't happen immediately, but we can at least start having that discussion and start talking about it in the issue queue. Some other things that would be great about CKEditor would be if we started communicating our overall plan a little bit better. Greg, thank you for the comment that you posted to the issue queue. Somebody came in and was like, "Hey, you know, what's like? How do I even have CKEditor 4 and 5? Like, what's going to happen?" And you outlined a very nice, like, if you want to have 4 and 5, here's what you should do. And that's that kind of messaging about like, what should people do? A change record also is definitely going to be necessary. I started linking to an imaginary change record from the contrib module to help explain things. Yeah, a lot of these things would be great to get out there.
I thought that it was going to be a quick comment, and then when I reached halfway, I thought to myself, oh, this needs to be a blog post. So I am going to convert it to a blog post and have it somewhere for a reference, either a blog post or a documentation article, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it would also be worth, if we have such a blog post, it would be worth sending out via our news block as well, to put onto people's dashboards.
When I started saying about a blog, sort of like the option to have it in documentation popped in my mind, and maybe that's a more appropriate place actually, rather than a blog post, because it's not a recipe, and we can start the documentation talking about it. The plan is to in the future, you know, and also mention the contrib module, and once it is in core, then we change the wording, like the tense of the verbs being used.
Yeah, there's going to be like, I think there should be two things here. There should be like a blog post that is like, here is our plan. And then there should be a documentation page that says, here's how you do the upgrade. So yeah, two separate things for two separate purposes.
Yep.
Okay, and I had a question about this. Oh, so Nate, your point about putting something on the dashboard, the notification, you would wait until we get a blog post and link to that, or is there, you know, could we be asking people, you know, to try out the module now? I mean, you know, is there something I could do today that would be a useful announcement, or should we wait till we have a blog post?
Let's wait till we have a blog post, I think. But thank you.
Makes sense.
I'll commit to writing a blog post, which I hate saying, but I'm going to say it because I know that I'm the one that should write it. So I'll work on putting that together on backdropcms.org.
Yeah, and I'll tentatively commit to writing the documentation or starting a draft of the documentation.
Okay. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Bug fix release, CKEditor 5. Those are the main topics for today. Let's see. We've got general issues here. Kind of a follow-up out of the code sprints. We've got issue 2231. Issue 2231 is switch to a simplified array syntax for the database connection information. Martin. Is it Martin Price? Is that his last name?
Yes. Yeah, it
okay.
is.
Yeah. Yorkshire pudding.
It's Martin Yorkshire.
He promoted this issue as something that he'd like to move forward. We have an ongoing problem where if your database connection string contains special characters, they have to be URL escaped in our current database connection string, which is difficult for people. And so this issue makes it so that we'd like to switch to using an array for our database connection string in settings.php. But we've got a little hang up here, and that it looks like we're going to need to update backdrop rewrite settings in order to make this possible. So Greg, I think this spins into a sub issue. It looks like 6297. Is that right? Is there any thing you need help with there?
It's not help, it's just time. Because the sprint was in the way, I focused on other things, and I did start, and I have sort of like some work done on my local. It's just not ready for a pull request yet. The snag that I've hit is this, which is odd. So the tokenizer system in PHP is basically much more easy and superior because it basically does a lot of the things that we need. For example, it parses a PHP file, and each time that it finds a doc block, or regardless of how many lines it is, or a series of comments, it just tokenizes it as a single comment and with the respective line number. So you can totally ignore those because we're not rewriting those in our settings PHP files. So that's a good thing. It tokenizes variables in a consistent way, regardless if there's spaces before them or other, odd things that can happen. The bad thing about it is that it, instead of tokenizing, for example, if conditionals and taking the whole if else conditional, it tokenizes the word if and then the variables within them and the brackets. So maybe a good solution there that I'm exploring now is to read the file line per line or a combination of things. Anyway, I've made some progress, a little bit of a snag, but it looks far more promising than what we have now. Otherwise, we will have a lot of regex craft trying to figure out where the thing is, which can be finicky and break in ways that we cannot imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas using the tokenizer is how PHP natively parses PHP files. So, yeah.
Good. Yeah, I haven't used the tokenizer before, so I'm not quite sure how it works.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to add a comment with a DPM export that would explain things, or like a dummy pull request that is not like a draft pull request that demonstrates how it works so that people can get a better idea. But yeah.
Cool. Okay. Super. That's issue 6297. Okay. Yeah, I don't really have other topics for today, I don't think. Let's check the 127 milestone.
Yeah. Well, I had one, but there's one that's actually in the milestone. I think that I just want to see if you saw the update. It's the visibility rule one, Nate. So it looked like you made some progress on that. And then I don't know if you saw RG Piano's comment.
Yeah, I broke it accidentally.
Okay. So is the thing RG Piano found a big problem or just a trivial one, or do you not know yet?
It's a trivial problem to fix. It's a big problem for users.
No, I meant to fix.
Yeah. I actually took out some code that I thought was unnecessary, and turns out it is necessary. And so I think if we just put it back in there, I think that the pull request will start working again. I closed my pull request because I feel like Jen's approach is now satisfactory. It's avoided the translation problems. It does seem more clear than my approach, and it's not particularly complicated. So I'd say, let's just run with that. So yeah, on me to restore some of that code that I took out, and I think that'll fix that problem that RG Piano raised.
Okay, great. I just wanted to check and make sure because that would be nice, another nice one to get in the next release if we can.
Yeah, that's issue 4029, just for reference. Yep.
Sure. Okay. So is it worth? Can we? I mean, I think people could still look at. You can see the UI, which is really the big issue that if anybody wants to provide last minute feedback on, but it just might not work in some cases. Is that right? Or it's actually. I had the feeling that it was kind of an edge case that it wasn't working, or is it?
Yeah, it doesn't. It runs into a problem where if you're using it on a layout that has more than one context, then it can run into an error. So yeah, if you just use it on user/%, it's going to be fine. If you use it on dashboard, it's going to be fine. But yeah, if you use it on something like I don't even know what has multiple contexts, one of which includes a user, but yeah, not very likely to occur. You're right.
Okay, good enough. Well, if you've got nothing else, I'd just like to get your opinion on something quick. It would be kind of a new issue, so it's not really a priority, but and we may have talked about this in the past, but I ran into it again recently, and I don't know that there's an open issue for this. The issue was with Tatsu. Indigo Zella has created some themes with it's like a CSS injector that's right as part of the theme. And I like this idea for somebody to be able to make some final tweaks right in their theme. And I added this to Tatsu. The problem is that it gets crammed into this left-hand column. And the way that this page is currently working is that the settings are in one column. This is primarily a problem with the color module installed, because the color module creates this preview on the right side, which takes up 2/3 or more of the page, 3/4. And then all the other settings get crammed into the left. If you turn off the color module, then I think the settings have the whole page. And for example, Indigo Zella's Pellerine theme has the same kind of setting, but it stretches all the way across. But that's only because she's not using the color module preview. She doesn't provide any color module support. Anyways, I then thought, well, maybe I could just create a second page of config that didn't have the preview on it and put this there. But it seems like that's not really possible the way themes currently work, that all settings have to go in this one column on this one page. And it seems, it is a disadvantage. It hasn't been, some themes most themes don't have a lot of settings in Backdrop. There are a couple of them, especially some of the early themes that don't get a lot of use, that have really long columns here with extra settings because everything's crammed over here. Anyways, Greg and I talked about it, and we could either try to make some changes that allowed for these settings to take up more of the page, or we could allow for more than one page. Craig suggested maybe there be by default 2 possible pages for settings for any theme. One for the color settings, which would include the preview, and then another page that just let you put any other settings that wouldn't be constrained by the. Anyways, I just wanted to bounce this off you, see if you had any other suggestions, or if there was sort of one of those approaches made more sense, so that if I open up a ticket, because I don't know of an existing issue on this topic.
We don't have one. What I was thinking, Nate, is either we keep this page as it is, and then we provide, by default, we stick the color settings and the preview in a region or a row, if you like, that is by itself. So we allow other settings to be placed above or below it. Or then we stick secondary tabs, basically, and we have one dedicated for the color module with a preview and the other one for all other settings. So I don't know what you think about either of those.
Yeah, having it, well, I'm thinking about the feasibility of this, that the way that these settings pages work for themes is really weird. Like, it's very, very old school, that it's like just a .php file that you just like dump stuff in. Like, there's no wrapping function or anything. I think the idea at the time was that it was to make it so the settings pages were easy for themes, but it also made it kind of restrictive because themes don't have a hook menu. They don't actually make this page. They don't even use form alter to like make this page. So yeah, I don't know. Adding the ability to have it be able to make multiple pages will probably lead us into a very large refactor of just how theme settings work, because where it is right now is probably going to be pretty difficult to extend to make it be multiple pages. So that would probably be the more difficult route to go, having it make multiple pages. We could do some things to maybe make it so that themes had more control over this page, though, like the way the color module like alters itself into this page. Maybe we could have some way of opting out of that alter, like, some like property at the top, like, pound color alter equals false or something like that. And that would basically be like opt out of color module modifying your form and you want to do it all manually, perhaps manually placing the color preview. And then you could put the color preview inside of a controlled location in the form.
Right.
But I guess now I'm saying that there's another possible problem here, and that I'm not sure that you have control over the CSS here either. I guess maybe, can you add a CSS? Yeah, you can probably use pound attached and attach a CSS file from your front end theme to the back end form here to make it so that you could position stuff as necessary to like get the color preview in the right spot. Because what I'm looking at this, like just structurally, I think that there should just be a section for color that has the sidebar, right? And then there should, and it should just not affect the rest of the form. And that way you could put the color settings at the top of the form or at the bottom of the form with the sidebar and everything like that. And it would just all be contained inside of one wrapper element. But I'm afraid that what color module might be doing here is that it alters itself in and just says all of the settings shove over to one side, put color on the other side. And if you could tell it, just don't do that, like I'll put the color preview in myself, then that might be a solution.
Okay.
So,
okay.
Let's get an issue started.
Yeah, I'll try to sum up that. I'm not sure I fully understand it, but I'll do my best to then maybe ask you to take a look at it. And just
another thing that might work, just thinking about this, would be in color module, we could make it so that it would work inside of a wrapper if a wrapper was present. And so the themes could restructure their forms to put everything inside of like form, color, header, form, color, general, form, color, tabs, and breadcrumb. And then the big form, color, preview would be where color module alters in its whole preview. And basically, what I'm saying is that instead of color module altering the root of the form to inject the preview, it could check if there's a color sub-element and put itself into the sub-element instead. And if the sub-element exists, then it puts it into the sub-element. If the sub-element doesn't exist, then it puts it into the root. And that would be another way potentially of solving this problem, to make it so you could put the preview into some place that was predictable. I think that would also be fine.
Sure.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think so. And I'm going to make a quick case for, why this is important, right? Which is, if we think about like WordPress, I think WordPress has built into core the ability to sort of add CSS through the UI. I don't expect that we're going to get that ability in Backdrop in core. And right now that possibility exists within the CSS injector module or the CSS. And we have multiple modules that allow you to do this. But I still feel like this is the kind of thing that some users expect to be able to do, and the ability to integrate it in a contrib theme just sort of makes it a lot simpler, and it's like it's now not requiring multiple modules, and it, I think it is a popular site builder kind of feature. So, and the inability to do that to do that in a nice way in the theme right now is probably is a big limitation.
Yeah. It does also make sense. I'm not really a fan of code in the UI, but
Sure.
I'll put that aside. It also makes sense that it would be under appearance, right? Because it's like,
Yes.
it's literally the the code for changing the appearance. So yeah, it makes sense.
Well, I understand from we never do this in our projects, right? I want to provide this for site builders that are trying to do very minor CSS changes.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see. We only got a couple of minutes left. A couple of things. I want to celebrate that we removed the grippy from 127. So the text area resize thing is now finally been removed. So that eliminated a JavaScript file, the grippy or textarea.js, and just replaced it with CSS because resizing text areas can now be done with CSS only. That brings to mind the remove IE specific code and libraries issue, which is issue number 214, triple digit issue number. I filed a pull request for this a couple weeks ago because I thought it would be relatively easy, and Kim LaLuna pointed out a very valid problem with my approach in that I just removed all of the conditional IE support, conditional CSS support for IE. But it's unfortunately possible that if somebody has specified a library or CSS files being IE only, now that the conditional support is removed, the IE only CSS file will now get added to all browsers, which is not what we want, because that I'm sure will contain some really hacky stuff that will break other browsers. So I thought that just removing conditional support would be trivial because, oh, it only affected IE, so we'll just remove it and then it won't affect anything. But now you end up with this weird leakage of CSS, IE only CSS files leaking out onto other browsers. So the pull request needs some work to figure that out. I'm still not quite sure what the solution is because when you get into the weeds of it, the syntax can start getting really weird, where you can actually say, you can actually have not IE only libraries as well. So, or CSS, you could say only load this thing on things that aren't IE. And so like figuring out the logic of like, you know, when stuff should be shown and when it shouldn't be shown is unfortunately a little bit more difficult. We'll still have to have a fair amount of logic that processes those things if they exist, but ideally we won't be outputting conditional comments anymore at all because they're just not relevant anymore. But I wanted to just get rid of the pound browsers attribute entirely, but I think that we'll unfortunately need to keep it just to make it so that we don't accidentally start outputting CSS in the wrong places. So it won't be used for what it says that it's used for anymore, which will need to do some documentation updates, but yeah, don't use it. Maybe we can just do an audit of our contrib themes and just be like, you know, because all contrib themes could very easily also get rid of all of their IE only style sheets at this point. Like everybody should be getting rid of it. So that could be another approach. But you know, there's people that installed these contrib themes. They might not update their contrib themes. They could have duplicated them. Yeah, we have a backwards compatibility problem here for sure. But sure, would be nice to get rid of.
It's a nice segue because I think we agreed that once we have the 127 release, we're going to have a discussion about when do we start the 2.x branch and start working on all those things like deprecations and, you know, breaking backwards compatibility where we cannot do otherwise. Right?
I think I don't know if you were here, Nate, but we talked about like having a dev meeting dedicated to that issue after the next release in January.
Yeah.
Just let's talk about what the plans are for 2X and maybe start communicating those.
That sounds great. It might not be soon, but I think it would be great for us to really be talking about it again. I think it's been a long enough period of time since we last talked about it. I think the Drupal 7 life got extended one more time again since the last conversation we had. So yeah, that'd be great.
All right.
Okay. Well, it's the top of the hour and we're out of time. I have a meowing cat, all kinds of signs that we're done for today. So thanks everybody for being here.
Yep. Take care.
And see everybody on the internet and